Welcome everyone to another build order tutorial. This time it's for all the Protoss players out there, a PvT build order that's cheesy and all in and shown to us by Zest. I thought it was a fun build, hopefully you guys do too. Let's get started. Send your probe for the 14 pylon placement. Chrono your Nexus with the pylon finished, and then grab your 16 gateway. And you can also scout at this point as well. It's a pretty safe timing. Okay, 17 assimilator. Zest here checks around for any SCVs, potentially building engineering bays. You can do the same. With the assimilator finishing in the main, send 2 probes to it, and then just rally in the 3rd one. With your gateway close to finishing, send a probe to the pylon field and build your 20 cybernetics core. And send the probe to the low ground, and when you have those 400 minerals, get your 20 Nexus. $21 pylon. And your 22 assimilator. Chrono out the Adept. And then chrono your Nexus. With the 2nd assimilator finishing, send 2 probes there and fill with the 3rd one. Get a STARGATE. Adept should pop. Go ahead and shade immediately to the other side of the map. Grab a STALKER. Start up a WARPGATE. If you didn't send your Adept across the map, now would be a good time to do so. Chrono the natural Nexus. Get a pylon. Start up an Oracle at the Stargate. And when you have 50 energy on a Nexus, chrono the Oracle. And start up a 2nd Stalker from your gateway. Should be consistently building probes. Get a gateway. And a Twilight Council. And then another gateway. And go back to building probes. Make sure to control your Oracle so that it doesn't die to a Wood Mine, which means perhaps playing conservatively with it. Get your 3rd assimilator, and then, as I said, protect your Oracle, which Zest doesn't do; it dies. But you know, try to keep that thing alive. Get your 3rd Nexus around 4 minutes. Start up Blink and chrono it. And then fill your 3rd assimilator. Warp in a SENTRY. As well as a STALKER. Zest is placing down pylons to stop it from being supply blocked, but also to scout a potential Wood Mine drop, which does occur around this time, so be on your guard. Just try to remember not to get supply blocked from here on out. Warp in 3 Stalkers. We have a little kerfuffle here for Zest, where he doesn't deal with the Widowmine drop too quickly. But once you've dealt with it, build another 3 Stalkers, and then Chrono Blink once again, as well as your Nexus. Try to rebuild any probes that you've lost. Hallucinate a Phoenix, and send it across the map. We haven't had scouting in a little while. Grab a Forge, and then Chrono the 3rd Nexus as it is finished. Start up Charge on the Twilight Council. You can also send your Stalkers across the map, usually a pretty safe time to do so after the Widowmine or Hellion drop, whatever it was, as they shouldn't have their next push ready to go quite that fast, but do be careful. Your Stalkers can do damage and that's great, but they are better off being kind of scouters and time buyers. Don't be a Nero. Gonna have a gateway explosion here. Set up 4 gateways. Start a +1 on the Forge and Chrono it. Warp in 3 Stalkers. And then when you have the money, build 3 gateways. That's a total of 7 gateways building. At this point, you should be properly saturated on all 3 bases. Get a Dark Shrine right now. And grab a 4th gas. So proper saturation being the minerals filled out and any gases that you do have. Send a probe out into the map to set up your first proxy pylon. Preferably someplace far to the left or far to the right of the map on your opponent's side. And then another probe sent on the other side to put down your proxy pylon number 2. This is what makes the build so weird. That and skipping a robo. Grab another gas, so you're on being 5 gases. Start warping in mass zealots. Perhaps at home if you are about to be pushed. And then slap down a proxy gateway both at proxy pylon number 1 and proxy pylon number 2. It is around this time that a lot of Terran players will be pushing with the big bio armies, so do try to deal with that first and foremost. But once you have dealt with any push, you should be able to push this back. You've invested a lot into army. Then you should also have +1 weapons done. So ideally, you push the Terran back, and you're hitting around 7:45 to 8:15 on that timer. And hopefully, with this push, you're going to win. Let's move on to the build discussion. So the strengths of the build, it's a solid opener. Solid enough anyways. Twilight Council doesn't come down that fast, but with the Stargate hopefully not losing its Oracle, it does give you a lot of vision and time buying if they are doing something a little bit weird or cheeky. It's a solid strategy outside of proxy gateways. If you want to use this as it is, great. If you want to use this as a way to learning how to macro with a Twilight Council or Stargate Twilight Council macro opener, point is mass gateway type, blink and charge, right? Then this is also good to know how to do. You can again take this and macro with it, or already be macroing with the focus of blink, stalker, charge, and then just include this into your builds to spice it up every now and again. It skips robo to speed up the attack. So the attack is going to be a little bit faster, a little bit harsher than perhaps a Terran would expect. It also is going to include that +1 weapons, whereas, Zaun had a very popular period of time where he didn't make this build, but he was popular for, where he would go pretty much gasless, like only 2 gases off of 3 bases, and then not get any upgrades, which obviously is not very macro-oriented. So it's fast, it hit hard, and it has +1 weapons. So skipping the robo can help speed all of that up. And he usually blindsides the Terran. I mean, what Protoss player has not 1 proxy gateway for its attack at around 8 minutes, but actually 2? I mean, not many people are going to be expecting that. The weaknesses of the build. Skipping Robo is extremely dangerous. Actually, cannot be overstated. This is an extremely dangerous build from Zest, especially considering he lost his Oracle right from the get-go. So no way of scouting what his opponent was doing outside of the one Widow Mine that he saw, right? Could have been swapped into a Hellion build or added Tech Labs and started up Vikings and Cyclones and moving across the map. It took a long time for him to get the follow-up scout. And then, of course, if the Oracle is the only thing that you have for, you know, for instance, a cheesy armory build, you know, Drilling Claws, Hidden Widow Mine build, like, it can be difficult to do. So the Robo, pretty helpful just for that Observer, right? And then also pretty helpful for an Immortal if they're going to do any of the earlier attacks. If you're going, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, because your Oracle sees something, but you're only on, like, blinkless Stalkers, it can be a tough defense. It's possible, but it can be very tough. No main attack with Warp Prism. Perhaps the best thing about a Warp Prism is that it can both do a reinforcement point. Fantastic. It can also go into the main and set up 2 different attack paths. Now, you can kind of do it with the fact that you have 2 proxy gateways, one on the left, one on the right, so you can push and pull the Terran player apart in a way that they would not expect, but it always hits that extra little bit harder to have a Warp Prism enter into the main, both in, you know, the actual damage that it does, and also that the Terrans start to rage when they have a Warp Prism in their main. If the proxies are found, it really weakens the attack. I mean, it's unlikely they'll find both proxies, but especially if your map control with the Stalkers isn't very good, and they're very on point with Marines being spread out, it'd be very awkward to see a proxy gateway go down and then a second one. And if those go down, you don't really have a way to reliably do the attack. You can try. You can warp in and send the units across the map, and it might work, but it's definitely more awkward. And lastly, it is an all-in. There's not a whole lot of follow-up to this, especially because Zest chooses to go for a Dark Shrine, as, you know, he uses that in addition to push and pull the Terran player apart with now the Hidden Cloaky Boys attacking one of his bases, and he also uses them, I think, in an Archon fashion in one of the attacks. I will tell you guys that in this replay, Zest did lose, being totally honest here, but it's still a fun build. So yeah, the DTs aren't exactly the best thing to have, but this could probably be changed up so you don't have to include the DTs. It's more fun, it really angers a Terran, but if you're looking for more of a macro follow-up, then perhaps while adding on those gases, also add on a Templar Archives. Either way, still very committed build. Some tips and tricks to help you guys out. Know the common Widow Mine drop timings to prepare. Now, Zest knows the common Widow Mine drop timings, absolutely. And even he still had a little bit of an awkward scenario with the Widow Mines, because he almost caught it, but then not quite. So just being able to pull the probes away immediately and only lose, you know, 1 probe per Widow Mine is going to make you, maybe not you a much better player, but your early game as a Protoss much smoother, which should make you a better player. Because it is the most, still the most common opener, I would say. Use the Sentry to hallucinate, scout, and provide high ground vision. Now again, the Oracle can do both of those things, so you can just say use Oracle to provide high ground vision. But if you lose it, like Zest did, then the Sentry can be a solid backup plan. Use the proxies to try and get zealots behind the Terran army. So obviously there's a big benefit in that you can try and attack on their 3rd base and in their natural, or if they're being really greedy at their 4th, something like that, right? And that's huge because they might miss split. But the other thing that you're going to want to try and do is, especially if you know where the army is, your revelations are really good and keep tagging the army, is that you're going to want to kind of like get them to be convinced that you're attacking from the front, like most people would do, and then suddenly charge in from behind with those 8 zealots, because you don't have a lot of ways to stop them from kiting you. You don't have a lot of force fields, you know, if any, honestly, and they can do a lot of micro. So if you get the zealots behind them and they start microing in a frenzy only to be trapped, you're going to have a much easier time killing their entire army and then moving into their infrastructure. Try to stop any first attack with at-home defense, then immediately counterattack. So this is something I brought up in the guide, but to reiterate, they usually have, you know, pretty common attack timings. They have the opener with the Widow Mine, we know that one, 4:35-ish minutes type thing. And then they have a follow-up attack, sometimes with tanks, sometimes with a drop, but, you know, usually when their stim is done and their medevacs are out. So that's usually the timing if you don't know any other build timings. Watch for the medevacs. You want to squash that. because you have the ability to do so. Now, they could retreat, they could wisely scan ahead and be like, oh, fuck that, I'm not doing it, and pull back, and that's great. But better for you to actually make them pull back than have some very, very awkward base trade scenario. It's far superior to just crush it, especially if it has tanks, they can't run away, and then immediately counterattack. So that just about does it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope this is a fun build for you all out there, especially those who are getting a little bit tired with just the regular Stargate opener or Twilight Council opener. I know I'm getting a little bit tired with it. But if you do have any questions, or you want something clarified, or just in general, I do now have a newbie-friendly stream every Friday, so usually the day after this video is released, and you can ask questions and get help with StarCraft 2, either from the chat or from me. It's a day where I answer even the most repetitive of questions with the most calm possible, so check it out if you would like some help. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you guys next week for another build order tutorial.